for Scanning Pens. I'm also joined today by my colleague Jim, who manages our secondary school, so some of you may already know Jim. So thank you all so much for tuning in from across the UK, and we've got some people from overseas as well, for this week's webinar, which is about embracing assistive technology and getting students on board. This webinar is recorded, so you'll get a copy which will be emailed to you or anyone else that's registered, and it's also uploaded to the Scanning Pens YouTube channel, and we're live streaming on Facebook as I speak. So if any of you lose a connection to this platform, then do go onto the Scanning Pens Facebook page as well. So if you join late or have to leave early, then you can listen to it at a later date. There is a panel down in the bottom, so I can see you've all noticed that. So morning again, everyone. So if you do have any questions during the webinar, then just pop them in the chat box, and hopefully we'll have some time to go through them at the end, or we can get back to you after the webinar if we can run over time. So I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Laura Stevens. Laura is the Learning Support and Subject Lead Tutor at Barton Peveril Sixth Form College, where she's been working for the last 4 years. She studied film and television studies at Southampton Solent University, and technology has been a key focus in helping to foster a culture of independence amongst the students that she actually works with. Laura has developed a programme of study for students at Barton Peveril, where individuals are empowered to use digital strategies to help reduce the barriers to learning and increase their confidence. She has recently been part of an expert panel discussion at BET 2020 and was also on a panel I was just speaking to her a few minutes ago at this year's online BET. And she's explored the ways of supporting learners with dyslexia through using assistive technology. And in September 2020, she won the Pearson Silver Award for Innovator of the Year. So without further ado, I will now hand you over to Laura to present today's webinar. There you go, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Geraldine, for the introduction. And hi, everyone. Thank you very much for coming today and giving up your time to listen to me this morning. So as Geraldine mentioned, I'm going to be talking about embracing assistive technology and how to get students on board with that as well. So my email, if you do have any questions, hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end, but if you do want to get in contact with me, my email is here, and also you can find me on Twitter at LSBP Support as well. So please do feel free to contact me anytime. So to start us off, I'm just going to go through the agenda of what we're going to explore today. And then we get straight into it. So first of all, just going to give you a general overview of learning support at Barton Peveril and give you an idea of sort of the amount of students that we interact with. Then we're going to have a look at assistive technology experimentation and think about different ways that you can reach students through experimenting and exploration. Just going to take a quick look at exam access arrangements and assistive technology becoming a normal way of working for all students rather than just using the technology in an exam situation. So my favourite bit, speaking about the students and our assistive technology advocates, and where the students become the expert and teach others about what they're using. So we'll dive into that and what we do there. Thinking about the whole student picture and how you can use assistive technology for not only learning but also health and well-being, and how both have an impact on one another. And then I'll just give you a little summary of what's next in terms of what we'll be doing at Barton Peveril, and then hopefully, as I mentioned, some time for questions as well. But of course, as I said, feel free to contact me and on Twitter as well. So just get started. Geraldine's already done a brilliant introduction, so thank you for that. Just a little bit about me. As mentioned, I'm the subject leader and learning support tutor at Barton Peveril, and I coordinate the support for the students with educational healthcare plans and provide support for a wider range of students as well. So So you've done some talks at BET in terms of focusing on technology and how that can support learners with dyslexia in particular, and also digital inclusion. And yeah, won the Silver Award for Pearson Teaching Award, and that was for Digital Innovator of the Year, so which was a real privilege to get. So in terms of more of a general overview of learning support at Barton Peveril, just to put it in context for you, we have around 4,000 students altogether at Barton, and we have around 350 of those students who have a learning support session, and that is either with myself or my the head of learning support, Julie Stickland. We also have around 600 students with exam access arrangements, so from obviously extra time, readers, scribes, but also a lot of those using technology for their exam arrangements also. In terms of what students do in terms of working through a series of modules, so in the learning support sessions, a lot of it's conducted through Google Classroom, particularly at the moment with our online learning. And we cover a range of different study skills, so from organisation to revision, exam technique, but also there is a key module all around assistive technology. All of those modules do encompass a range of different technology within them, but there is also a key focus there as well. So this is accessible to those approximately 350 students, but our resources are also available to all students across the college, so those 4,000 students, and that's made accessible through a Google site and a dedicated Google Classroom as well. So in terms of our key sort of ethos and what we want to achieve for students with a learning support need at Barton, our key area is independence, and assistive technology allows us to encourage that in our students a great deal. Developing long-lasting study habits, so a real emphasis on this isn't just technology or skills that are going to help you at college, but also beyond that into their careers at university, apprenticeships, whatever route they go into. Effective use of assistive technology, which I'll be obviously going into more today, and increasing confidence for their studies, but also within their self, and looking at how we can improve their self-esteem through getting them, as I mentioned, to become the experts of this technology. So what I thought I'd go through first is just how we introduce assistive technology to our students at Barton. So we start with the why. So thinking about why in particular we're suggesting technology, then maybe another form or another strategy. How is this not only going to help them now, but also in their future? So we have a real emphasis on how they can use it beyond their college studies. Also in terms of the reasons why that we want them to become independent learners, and we want to increase their confidence. We also, as I mentioned, discuss the future. So we do have real emphasis on, as I mentioned, not just thinking about their college studies now, but how they can use this assistive technology in their not only their employment, but also just their general lives as well after college. So we have discussions around thinking about what technology could you use when applying for DSA as well, and what is going to be accessible to you in the future. So speech to text, for example, is not only helpful at college, that's going to be helpful as a lifelong strategy that they can use. We then introduce the technology. So as I mentioned, we have that through the modules, but we provide a range of different ways that they can interact with the technology. So this may be through tutorial videos. This can be through the technology advocates, which I'll go into more detail later, and that's where the students teach other students. But we really allow them to, we introduce it and then they explore it, which is the next point. So allow exploration and experimentation, knowing really that there's no incorrect way of sort of using this assistive technology, but finding the ones that work for them, and encouraging them to trial it out for a period of time, not just sort of use it once and then dismiss it. Think about how they can use that over a longer period and see whether it really does work for them, but allow that experimentation and trialing out the different technology that is available. Really important as well that we do give time over to this within the learning support sessions, but we also encourage it for their own independent reflection. But give time over to the reflection of whether that assistive technology is working for the student, and whether that's really what they need right now, or do we need to adapt it. So we reflect it through one-to-one discussions and also small groups, but the students are also encouraged to complete a reflective journal through Google Classroom, where they reflect on whether that, as I said, that technology is working for them, and if it is, what impact is that having on their studies? So when they look back, they can see the difference of, once they've used that technology, what impact is it having on their grades or their confidence or their ability to engage with their learning, both in and outside of lessons. And really important, encourage students to share. So the start of this year, I asked second years to share their assistive technology tips with the first years. So we collated ideas through a Jamboard. We've created videos where actually the students have, again, informed other students of what is working for them right now, and encouraging those discussions around what is, but also maybe what isn't working as well, and how we can adapt that. So a little bit further in terms of the experimentation. So as I mentioned, we have a series of those modules that are interactive. So they contain YouTube videos, they contain tasks that the students practically do. So for example, with text helps read and write, we assign an assignment on Google Classroom, and they complete that, and actually giving them a bit more structure on how to use the technology. So rather than just saying, here it is, there is an element of that, there's an element of them experimenting with it, but also a bit more of a structure where they can follow instructions to find out how to use that technology. Provide access to the technology. So for example, as I mentioned, with Text Helps Read and Write, they can access that for free at home, and also scanning pens, which you can see here, actually providing them to use it beyond the exam as well. So often we think of scanning pens to be used in an exam situation, but how can that student use it in the classroom, or how can they use it for their independent work as well, to make that learning more accessible? As I mentioned, encourage use both in and outside of the lesson. So what we have a real emphasis on within the learning support sessions, because at the moment we see them for 3 hours over a fortnight, so it's not encompassing all of their learning. We want to make sure that they're using that for their general day-to-day learning as well, not just something that they use on an occasional basis. So I come into learning support and I use my scanning pen or read and write. We want it to be beyond that, and that's our real emphasis as well. Inform staff when the student is trialing a new piece of technology, because often once they see one student using it, another student will sort of see that going on and maybe feel more confident to use their technology within the classroom as well. But if the staff are involved and they perhaps have some training on how that's used, they can suggest that to other students to use as well. And I think that's key, not only keeping it within learning support and for students with a learning support need, but pushing it beyond the college so it becomes a whole college approach. Develop understanding and skills through personalised support. So this is where the one-to-ones come in key for this. So at the moment, we do Google Meet one-to-ones, but for those 350 students, we have a one-to-one with every single one of those students to discuss how that technology can help, and personalise that to the skills that they want to develop. Show what you use. So really keen on saying, actually, so I really like using Todoist, for example, for organisation. I use Read and Write, I use scanning pens, I use a lot of the technology that I suggest. So if you can, trial it out yourself, and it's often things that are going to help us with our own learning and our own sort of studying as well. So show them what you use, and show that you are keen on using this technology and how it can help them. As I mentioned previously, have those discussions, but do them around what doesn't work as well as what does. It's okay if they don't get along with a bit of assisted technology. Not everybody's going to like everything that you use, but have those discussions. Why didn't it work? What do you need to improve? What could help you in the future as well? So in terms of some of the apps and technology that we suggest, I thought it would be quite nice just to go through some of the suggestions for a few different areas of study skills, because it's always, I think, quite nice to have some practical applications that you can go back and feedback. So in terms of looking at some 4 key areas: organisation, revision, exam technique, and self-study. Organisation, because we are sort of a Google-based college, we suggest things that the students are already familiar with. Because we do so much through Google Classroom and the Google Suite, we suggest things like Google Calendar or Google Keep. So the students already are RFA and they have an understanding of that technology. So it may be that they feel more comfortable with using it. And sort of linking up Classroom with Calendar just to make it much easier as well in terms of keeping on top of organisation. We also suggest other apps, and again, a real emphasis on anything that's free. I'm a big fan of a free app or a free bit of technology that I can get my hands on and the students can use as well. So we suggest things like Todoist, but also things that, again, make that process easier. So Adapt is a nice free app that students can use where they put in their their subjects and their exam board, and it creates a revision timetable for them. So if you have students who perhaps struggle with getting themselves organised and want that further support and guidance, using apps like Adapt can be really supportive of this. Next, thinking about revision, so I'm sure you've heard of Quizlet, is a great one in terms of being interactive and creating online flashcards, using Seneca as well, and thinking about how you can reach other subject areas. So Memrise is a great one for modern foreign languages and learning languages. So try and think about, again, and this comes into the sort of personalised aspect of assisted technology, reaching those students who maybe are doing a language, and you can suggest a particular app just for them as well. In terms of exam technique, thinking about how you can help students improve things like their typing practice. So potentially using a free website like Typing Club, where they can improve their touch typing skills and their speed as well. So again, to make them feel more confident towards that exam, but also their general typing practice for college, but beyond college as well, or school. Obviously, scanning pens and the reader pen, encouraging that use beyond the exam, that it's something they can use day to day rather than just in that final situation for potentially a few hours. We want to use that all the time. And finally, thinking about self-study, so also that emphasis on independence, but also being aware that particularly at this time of online learning and distance learning, that concentration and self-study is going to be even more challenging for our students. So thinking about using apps like Forest and having that sort of rewards type system. So if you concentrate for this amount of time, you give yourself a break or you give yourself some form of reward. Block site can be for your students who really struggle with concentrating on one thing at a time and just need to focus on that one assignment or that one piece of homework without being distracted by other websites and apps. So it blocks it just for that one website. Thinking about using techniques alongside assistive technology, so things like Pomofocus, which concentrates on the Pomodoro technique, and also for students who might find sensory issues, you could have things like Noisily, which creates a soundscape that they can have on in the background if they don't like that silence within their working environment. So really thinking about those different stages from organisation, the revision element, exams, and also self-study when they're completing independent work, as I said, particularly at this time of online learning. So what I would say is think about in terms of a structure for introducing assistive technology to students, allow them to explore and experiment, try it out and see if it works. Trial those over a period of time and then review, have those one-to-ones and those discussions and those group discussions as well. What is working and what could they suggest to others? And then get their feedback. So what do they want more of? What are they enjoying using? Is there anything that they need sort of further to support them in the future? Also key, and sort of that element of feedback, you could collate the feedback in a number of different ways. We tend to use things like Google Forms and ask them what they're using currently. That collation of ideas that feels much more collaborative, using something like a Jamboard is really helpful as well. And as I mentioned, the second years, educating the first years at college, or obviously in a school environment, the older years, in informing the younger years as well of what is working for them. Those students from experience are a lot more likely to take on suggestions from other students sometimes. If they know it's working for their age group and the students around them, they often listen to that advice as well. Also, resources, as I said, from one-to-ones, and something that's come up recently, and well, particularly over these past few weeks, and I think into this new lockdown as well, are concentration tips for online learning in particular. So from that, I've created resources that have been provided to more than that one student who originally asked me for some tips. And this has then gone out to a wider set of students that's going to help them. So in terms of looking at concentration tips for online learning, I thought it would be good just to have a little think about how technology can help with that. So you could think about using things like the Google voice typing. So when the student is in an online lesson, they could put this onto a Google Doc, for example. Obviously, there's plenty of other applications that do this as well. And as the teacher is speaking, that will type up what is being said. So they can refer back to that as a form of notes if potentially they don't have LSA notes available to them. They could set reminders on their phone as little concentration reminders. So rather than it just being when their homework is due in, or for different types of organisation, actually just maybe a message that comes up saying stay focused, or 15 minutes to go, or whatever might be their motivating factor, they could put that as an alarm on their phone. Again, using apps like Forest to help with that rewards type system. If you know particularly a student who gets a great deal out of rewards, or from gaming or different things like that, and likes winning and enjoys that process, then Forest can be a good one. Encourage them to use brain training apps as well that can support with concentration, things like Lumosity that can support with that. Have discussions around health and well-being, and I will go into that in a moment, but using apps like Sleep Town that help with their sleep, in terms of, you can then say that your concentration is going to be improved in your lessons the next day if you're getting that good night's sleep. So have those discussions around health and well-being as well. Tomato timers is another one for the Pomodoro technique, and also read and write for listening back to their work can also help with concentration, rather than having to read reams and reams of information or to proofread their own work. If they can listen back to it, it can be easier to take in that information and help with concentration, particularly if they've had maybe 4, 5, 6 hours of online learning in a day. If potentially they might not want to look back at the screen if they're having to do homework or research. So as I mentioned originally about exam access arrangements and assistive technology, what we want to try and encourage, and what we do at Barton, is for it to become their normal way of working. And beyond just it being used in every assessment, we want the technology to be used for their homework, their pre-work, anything that they need to do in terms of their independent research. We encourage it for so we have a Q Extra program, so enrichment programs like the extended project qualification, because ultimately things like read and write are going to help with that as well. So speech to text, if the student has a human scribe, but the human scribe obviously isn't always available and they won't be with them at home either, they could use, as I said, the voice typing tools that are available on Teams and Google, and also using read and write. Using a computer reader or a reading pen, again, both in lessons, and providing that at the moment. We've sent out reading pens to students at home. Also, if they use a word processor and a coloured overlay on the screen, providing them with that to use not only in the exams, but having it as their common practice for their studies all the time. So we had a little think about how assistive technology had an impact during lockdown in particular. And actually what we found is those students who were already using assistive technology, so whether that was the students with a declared learning lead or exam access arrangements, or in particular our students who have an educational healthcare plan, they were actually more able and independent during the lockdown period than other students potentially have been. So as it is their normal way of working, we found that, as I said, particularly students with an EHCP, they had higher levels of confidence with being able to access the materials at home and use things like Google Classroom and Google Meet or the Google Chat option. They were able to access the materials easier and know how to make it accessible for them. So if they knew that maybe the document that they were reading needed to have a coloured overlay, then they knew how to add that through read and write. They also had greater levels of independence, so they weren't actually relying as much on the LSA or a member of the learning support team. They were actually able to use things like reading out loud or speech to text, rather than having to rely on another person. They had that technology available to them to use at home. But I think what's key and what came out particularly of this period of our second period of lockdown at the moment, is creating a community of knowledge sharing. So any way that you can get the uses of assistive technology out to a whole school or a whole college is going to have long-term benefits. So we do this in a number of ways. We have Google Meets, but we also provide information through a Google site, and we have a dedicated staff Google Classroom as well, which provides information about the technology that the students are using and how it can benefit beyond learning support. And as I put there, we're all in this together, this idea of shared knowledge beyond learning support, because sometimes it can be quite insular and the department can sort of have its own ideas and its own uses of technology, but any ways that that can be shared out with the wider community is a great thing to do. So moving on to assistive technology advocates, and this is really about the part of this webinar in terms of getting students on board. So we have a number of assistive technology advocates within our learning support department who share their knowledge with both of the staff and students. And I'm just going to talk through what they do, the impact that has on the students, and also how you can incorporate that into your own settings as well. So this really started from an idea of how we can empower students to use their knowledge and use their skills and ultimately try and build up their self-esteem and confidence to a point where they're becoming the teacher and they're becoming the expert. So the assistive technology advocates educate other students, but they also educate staff as well. And I'll go into how they do that in a moment. So as mentioned, we want a growth in confidence and self-esteem, particularly those students who may be struggling with their studies, or sort of have a view of themselves that they are struggling, would be sort of more appropriate to say, and where they've used technology to be able to make things more, the learning more accessible. So we've seen a real growth in their self-esteem, and the moment they see that they're teaching someone else their skills, that really gives them a real boost, and it's great to see. What's nice is that we have digital skills developed beyond the department, as I mentioned, not just keeping it within learning support, but this is open to all students and all staff as well. What's nice, and one of my favorite parts of this, is that you learn about new technology from the students, because they know that you're invested in their knowledge and their skills. They start to come up with their own ideas around technology that they've used, and they tell you things that you've maybe never heard of before as well, and you can inform more students. So the more emphasis there is on building up their confidence, they will then go away and do their own research and come up with different ways of using assistive technology, or, as I said, things that maybe you haven't thought of before. And the students become the experts. So it doesn't need to be all placed on you as a teacher or a learning support member, or whichever role you're in. We often think that we have to spend the time and educate all the students within a department or within a college, but actually the students can be the experts and they can inform them as well. Also helps with time management and saving you some time, and actually they can go out and inform them as well. So nice to have some help within a department, which is great. So some of the ways that we've got the assistive technology advocates involved in the college and providing support for the wider college community. So we've started off with looking at, so this is obviously pre-lockdown, pre-COVID. We had a technology carousel, and this was based within a sort of one of the meeting rooms, and we had a series of different assistive technology stations that were set up. So we had scanning pens, we had read and writes, we had typing club, we had a range of different types of technology and also apps as well that staff could come and have a look at and consider the ways that it might help other students within their classes. So, as I said, this was something that was practical. On each station, we had a different student technology advocate. So rather than the staff coming to me and asking for the support, they went straight over to the student, and the student showed them how to use that technology. What was really nice was that there were discussions around, and the students prompted these discussions around how it's helped them and how it could help others within their classes as well. So that obviously, as I said, was pre-COVID, when we were able to all meet in a room together. But what you could do is think about ways of incorporating this online. It may be that you have breakout rooms in the same way as something like a teach meet, for example. So it's nice and short and snappy little presentations or discussions with those students, and invite staff along. So it becomes a little bit more of an event as well, rather than just a short discussion. But yeah, you could use Zoom or Teams or Google, whatever sort of system you use within your school or college, to have these breakout rooms and have those discussions. You could also, and an element that we've done is use videos to inform students and staff as well. So again, rather than me creating the videos or a member of the learning support team, we ask students to create the videos. So they use things like Screencastify, or actually Chrome has done a lot of new features within the past couple of weeks, I believe, in terms of screen capture, and actually having free apps that you can use as well to capture the students using the assistive technology. So we've got an example here where a student has created a video on Seneca and how to use that and how that's impacted on her studies. But yes, students creating those videos, potentially creating a YouTube channel where you can upload them and share those further afield. So we often put those on Twitter and onto the Google site as well. What we've started recently, and particularly sort of during this second time of lockdown, is assistive technology chat. And this is at the moment being done through Google Meet. And I have a discussion with a student about a bit of technology that they're using. So you can see this video on my Twitter page if you want to check it out, just to see what we're talking about. There's a student, Lucy, who is talking about Text Helps Read and Write, and how it's impacted her studies and the sort of favourite tools that she uses and how she engages with it at home as well. So that's something we're starting, and that will be over these coming weeks. We'll have more of those chats with different students about the different types of technology that's helping them. So it'll be things like scanning pens, the Google Suite, and they feel very much part of something that feels quite formal and quite exciting. particularly if you put it on Twitter as well and you get some feedback from the companies who create this technology, you can feed that back to students, and actually that gives them a real boost, and we've seen some really nice growth in confidence from that. So those are just a few ways that you could get students on board and get students involved with becoming advocates for your department. And as I mentioned, it's excellent because you go beyond your singular department as well to make it wider across the environment. So just some feedback, a couple of students about their experiences of being a technology advocate. And I think even the name, they sort of feel that's quite a badge of pride to have within the college. So one of the students said they really enjoyed the experience of the technology carousel, and they felt that the teachers attended found it really useful as they got to see the technology used in action. And I think that's one of the main differences. If you can show it practically in use, and it's the student saying, this is how it helps me in this scenario. So scanning pens help me to engage with the reading material that you provide me in the lessons. So anything where you can see the technology in action is really going to help both staff but also students see the impact that it has, and hopefully that it's maybe sometimes easier to use than they might think as well, or that it's more accessible than they thought first of all. One of them said that another student said they feel more confident using the technology, not only for myself, but now suggesting it to other people. So building up that confidence to be able to suggest it with confidence to other students and staff. They also said that they're now more aware of all the technology that is available in the Barton Peveril community. So what was nice from those events like the technology carousel is that students having those discussions, they actually found out about other technology that other students were using, and then they could incorporate that into their own practice. So from this, I think I would really encourage you, if you can get students on board and get students engaged with becoming these advocates, whatever name you'd like to give it, it really can have a major impact, not only on your department, if you work in, for example, a learning support department, but beyond that for a whole college or school ethos of using assistive technology. So I'm just going to touch on about using technology and thinking about the whole student picture. So we know that studying is going to have an impact on health and well-being, and health and well-being is going to have an impact on studying and how students engage with it. So it's both important to suggest technology that can help with their well-being, but also thinking about digital downtime and having time away from the screen and from using technology. So technology can be great, but we do need some time away from it as well. And I'm sure we're all feeling this at the moment with the amount of screen time that we have. So think about digital downtime and incorporate that into students' timetables. So whether that's having a break during lessons, or also we have study periods at Barton when there is an opportunity for students to have some time away from the screen. So incorporate that so that they are more likely to potentially stick to that. Suggest apps to support with this. So it may be looking, as I mentioned, things like the block site one, where it sort of takes that distraction away. But you can also suggest apps that can help with well-being. So Calm is one that can help with things like mindfulness. Shine is a really nice one where you have students get a daily sort of motivation reminder, but also might be quite a nice one for teachers and staff as well, to have that little motivator each day. And things like relax melodies, so thinking about how students can take some time away from the screen and help them to relax after they've had a whole days of education. You might want to think about how you can offer non-digital options as well. So is there an option for that student to complete an assignment on paper, or just taking their self away from the screen and then using a little bit of technology to help? So it could be that they upload their work through using a free app like Adobe Scan, where the student can take a picture of their work and it uploads it as a PDF document. So they're not having to convert it, they're not having to do anything else. It's much more accessible for a teacher to look at as well. But thinking about potentially non-digital options that can reduce that amount of screen time. And also, what we tend to do is discuss the importance of why we're suggesting this downtime as well. So not only saying that you need to take some time away from the screen because it will help your eyes, and eye strain, which is an area, but also there's a wider impact that we can communicate to students that will help them with getting that balance right between using technology, but also having some time away from it as well. You might want to use a website, and I've included a link here to itstimetoLogOff.com that has some really interesting studies around the amount of time that is spent on digital resources and using technology. But some of the key areas that we focus on with students, things like it can reduce work productivity, deep thinking and maintaining focus are reduced. So again, those students that struggle with concentration, you can actually say, you need to take some time away from that technology. It will help with maintaining focus. Shorten sleep as well, which was quite a well-known one. And there's an interruption of face-to-face conversations. And on It's Time to Log Off, there's a lot more detail about sort of the traditional dinner setup where you would sit around and discuss. Actually, that's been taken away, and people are more focused on their devices than having those face-to-face interactions, which then ultimately has an impact on their well-being and how they feel around others. Something that our health and wellbeing department does within the college is a digital detox. So when we are in college, they offer this on a regular basis, and hopefully you can see this image here. So it will be in one of the cafes, and if students put their phones away and they have those conversations, they get a free muffin and a drink, which is always good. See plenty of staff down there as well. But it's just encouraging them to have that time away and start to have those meaningful conversations with others as well. Obviously a little bit more tricky to do that at the moment with the lockdown, but you can still encourage them to have a look at the research and have those discussions around when are you going to incorporate some digital downtime into your own plans as well. So we're nearing the end of the presentation, and hopefully some time for questions in a moment. But to think about what we're going to do next at Barton, I'm going to be continuing with the assistive technology chat videos with those students who are using a range of different technology, and I will post those on my Twitter page. So as I said, I'm at LSBP support if you want to take a look at some of the videos that I will be uploading on a regular basis. We're also considering within our department of having a sort of exam access arrangement suite. So a place where students can come to trial out the technology within a more exam-based environment. So sometimes the students have become very used to using the technology at home or on their own devices, but actually using it in an exam is a different way of using it. So they need to get used to that. So we would have a suite with text helps read and write for our computer readers, and also the scanning pens to use for readers as well. But having it more of an environment where students can actually experience what it is like to use that technology in an exam-based environment. For some of our students, we're actually going to continue with using Google Meet for one-to-ones. Some of the students have engaged more with those discussions, whether that's around things like anxiety or just being able to engage more with the teacher on a one-to-one basis. But actually some of those online interactions have been easier for the students to engage with. So we will be continuing some of that even when we're back in college. And finally, just continuing to develop the resources for the whole college community, and developing our staff Google Classroom on using assistive technology for, as I said, not only learning support, but also students across the college. So just to finish up, I wanted to provide you with my sort of top tips from the webinar, and thank you so much for listening to me today. So as I've mentioned previously, encourage experimentation and review. So allow the students to try it out, see if it works with their homework, their subjects. Are there apps that are specific to the subjects that they're studying? And review it. Is it working, or do we need to think of a different route? Also thinking about having those personalized discussions around assistive technology, where you can take the opportunity to have one-to-ones about the impact, and also getting those students on board, potentially to become advocates as well for your department. Having those one-to-one discussions are extremely valuable, or even small groups as well. Encourage assistive technology as normal way of working, not just for a specific subject or an exam, but become something that they can use not only in college, but beyond that as well, into their lives once they finish their formal full-time education. Create a team of advocates, and really this can help so much, as I've mentioned, to develop their self-esteem and confidence. Consider how assistive technology can not only help student but also staff well-being as well, and having those discussions around digital downtime. And a final tip really is make the most of all those free sources that are out there at the moment. I love Twitter to get loads of ideas from others. Things like this, these free webinars, make the most of it whilst we're in this time of online learning. Engage with all those ideas as well. So finally, just say, as I mentioned, my email is here. If you want to get in contact with me, which is las@barton.ac.uk, you can find me on LinkedIn, but also my main sort of communications all go on through Twitter at LSBP Support. Thank you so much for listening to me today, and I hope there's some ideas in there that you can take back to your own settings.
Thank you, Laura. That's been an absolutely brilliant session. And if you scroll through the chat, I'm delighted that everybody's been interacting with each other, and positive feedback. Absolutely brilliant for sharing your knowledge and information with everybody that's joined us today. There's so much technology out there, isn't there, that students can potentially use. And I think it's great that you allow them to access so many different things and try them out, because I think every student's different, isn't it? And something might work for one, doesn't necessarily work for the other. So it's all about getting something that they feel confident in using, and they can use either remotely, they can use in the classroom under normal circumstances.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you have this technology carousel as well. So you're really empowering your students to help other students, which is absolutely fabulous. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. So I'm sure you're going to be inundated, Laura, with people you direct. Been a few questions on here. If I just toggle back, so I don't know if anybody's got any questions they want to add into the chat room. But if you want, you can email Laura direct. You will all be getting a copy of the presentation for anybody that might be dropping out of this call already. So that will be emailed to you, and then you can either contact myself or Laura direct. So there was a question about read and write goals. I was trying to find it.
Sure.
Does your college pay for read and write for home use?
Yes, they do. Yeah. So all those 4,000 plus students can access that for free at home as well. Yeah, it was decided because we are finding students were using it so much within college and for their studies. So it may be that they were using the library for self-study or around the learning support area, but actually a lot of their study time was at home. So we wanted to make sure that they could access that piece of technology by themselves as well. So yes, the college does pay for that across the whole college.
So how are you finding students studying remotely at home at the moment? Are you managing to supply them with whatever pieces of technology that they have access to normally within college?
Yeah, I mean, we are in a very lucky position to be able to provide technology to the majority of our students. So whether this is sort of like 4G hubs in the sort of more remote areas to make sure their internet connection's more stable, Chromebooks as well, if students don't have a device at home, or if they're using a mobile or a shared device between siblings or their parents or guardians, then we provided that to them as well. Sent out the reading pens, so scanning pens have gone out. Also, as said, the technology, so being able to access read and write at home. So we are in a lucky position to be able to provide that for our students. But as mentioned, in terms of inclusion and getting sort of devices out to students, I would suggest following someone like Chris Dyson, who I did the BET panel with. He is really great in terms of, he's done a lot with getting local businesses to support his school in providing laptops for their students. So yeah, Chris Dyson on Twitter is a great person to follow in terms of if your school or college does struggle with providing devices and technology. There is a lot of support out there. It's just trying to delve into who's able to supply you with that.
Finding it, isn't it, Laura? There's so many initiatives running at the moment, you know, for people to access technology. And I think it's great that you've sort of covered the free apps that are available as well,
Yeah.
you know, for people to access as well.
Yeah, there's a whole range of free apps and really covers all the different study skills that you might need at home, but also when the students are back in school and college as well. But there's so much free stuff out there. Sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, so you sort of need to try and pare it down a little bit and find the best ones. But I think if you give it a go yourself, even if it's just a little trial, you can then suggest the key features to your students as well. And they quite like it when you say, oh yeah, I use that, or this app's really handy, I've been using it to organize myself. And that's another way of sort of getting them on board a little bit more and empowering them to use it. But yeah, there's so much out there. It's a lot of free stuff.
You shared an awful lot with us this morning. So, a question from Michelle: what is a good free brain training app, Laura?
Oh, so yeah, we've recently suggested Lumosity is one that you can use, and that's a website that's available and free. A lot of these do have a subscription element, but you don't have to, basically. So there are options. If students, we do have some students who actually use it so much that the subscription is worth them getting, but a lot of the time the free version is enough for them to use. So yeah, Lumosity is quite a good one to start with. But there's lots of different websites, but that's definitely something that I can provide you with some resources. If you want to drop me an email or message on Twitter, I can get some more links sent out to you.
Yeah, one question, Laura: can immersive reader be used in exams? I'm not sure about that one.
Oh, is that more of a Teams one? I believe. I think immersive reader might be Microsoft. I'm not 100% sure on that one.
No, I'm not.
But again, something that I can check and we can get back to them. But yeah, sorry, I can't, not sure definite answer on that one.
I know for technology, obviously our exam reader pen, as long as it's students' normal way of working, which Laura mentioned earlier. Actually, Sarah's answered that. Sarah Smith, thank you. Immersive reader in exams is a no.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah.
Just scrolling through. So many great ideas. Brilliant, Laura. Well done. Thank you.
Oh, thank you everyone for all your comments. That's lovely.
And just to remind you, we are sending a copy of the recording as well. We'll probably get our video team just to edit it down. It will appear on the Scanning Pens YouTube channel. Really appreciate the information. Always something new to learn, interesting. Yeah, lots of ideas to explore. Yeah, I think it's been great for you to take time out, Laura, and share so much information with us this morning.
Oh, you're very welcome. No, I hope there's some things that people can take back and use today. So
Yeah, and somebody's just suggesting the Core Scotland website as well. That have lots of apps for different ALNs, so that is a good one to have a look at as well. Yeah, read and write for exam use as well.
Yeah.
Clara, read, okay. Yeah,
Yeah, those tend to be the
there's
main.
someone typing. So, yeah, as I say, a copy of this presentation will be forwarded to everyone that's registered today. It is recorded, so you get a copy of it as well. And then if anyone's got any questions, you've got Laura's contact details on the last slide there. You can follow her on Twitter as well, follow her on LinkedIn, and email her direct as well. And then you can contact ourselves if you want any further information. But yeah, absolutely fabulous presentation, Laura, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. A list of apps would be great. So somebody else is asking that. I've just got
absolutely
Jim on the call as well. So Jim, you're our secondary school manager. Have you got anything to add?
Yeah, so if anyone's got any questions for schools, please feel free to email me. I'll pop it in the bottom here. But yeah, thank you so much, Laura. It was great to hear some of the fantastic ideas that you had. I was listening and really interested just for myself, never mind for work. I thought it was really interesting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, Laura. So the people are asking for a list of apps. So you probably be busy following up all these inquiries.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm happy to, and probably a list of apps, something I can put on Twitter as well.
Yeah, so it'd be great to do something else with you. I mean, thank you everyone that's joined this session. We're absolutely overwhelmed this morning with a number of registrations. So thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules. I know you're all busy and got new challenges with us all working remotely at the moment, and remote lessons, etc. So thank you all. Yes, Shirley, we offer training sessions as well, so we can send you some details on that as well. Yeah, so much information in an hour, Laura.
That's good. I always wondered if I had enough, but that was good. I timed it okay.
Yeah, it was really good.
Really good. I didn't realise there was so much out there, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Everything that you can use, it's really interesting.
Yeah, and lots of things like that, Jim, like you were saying, are really good for ourselves as well. They're just like nice apps and technology that we can use. So yeah, good for students and staff, which is always good.
Absolutely.
Have you used Dragon software, Laura, is a question that's just come through.
I haven't, no. We've had students that have gone on to purchase it with their DSA once they've gone on to university, but it's not something we use within Barton ourselves. We tend to use text help for things like speech to text and computer readers.
Okay. Okay, guys, so I think we're going to close. So thanks again, everybody.
Thanks again. Yeah, thank you.
We'll end this session now. But brilliant. Thank you, Laura.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.
Switch off now. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Perfect. Bye-bye.